They said showing up would save her image. Instead, every appearance seemed to create a bigger controversy. Every carefully planned photo opportunity sparked another backlash. Every attempt to look compassionate raised new questions. And now, when people look back at Meghan Markle's biggest public relations disasters, a pattern begins to emerge, one that critics claim she desperately wishes the public would forget. Meghan Markle has spent years trying to control the narrative around her public image. But what happens when the narrative refuses to cooperate? What happens when every attempt to look relatable, caring, or inspirational somehow turns into another headline she never wanted? Critics say that is exactly what has happened over and over again. And when you line up these incidents one after another, the picture becomes difficult to ignore. In May 2022, tragedy struck in Uvalde, Texas. 21 innocent victims lost their lives in a horrific school shooting. The nation was grieving. Emotions were raw. Then, Meghan arrived at the memorial site. Officially, she was there to pay respects and donate food. Supporters praised the gesture, but critics immediately noticed something else. Cameras, security, photographers, questions exploded online. Why was there so much attention surrounding a visit that was supposed to be private?
So, it's just, of course it's important that public figures respond to this tragedy, and that's the most ghastliest of tragedy, but you can't help thinking there's a heavy dollop of opportunism and insincerity in this, which I think most people would find, not to their life.
What made the backlash even worse was the timing. At that exact moment, her father, Thomas Markle, was reportedly recovering in a hospital after suffering a serious stroke. Suddenly, the conversation changed. Critics began asking uncomfortable questions. Why travel across the country for a public memorial while reportedly remaining distant from her own father during a medical crisis? The comparison spread everywhere. Commentators piled in. The story stopped being about compassion and started becoming about priorities.
We do know now she is never going to come and see her father. That's her main thing. She's a disgusting human being. The fact is, she said that it's going to be too expensive. She can't get a pass. Yes, and they won't pay for her, so it's much too expensive. Her excuses are beyond anything you could imagine.
Just when that controversy faded, another storm arrived. The Oprah interview. This was supposed to be the moment that changed everything. Meghan and Harry sat down in front of millions and prepared to tell their side of the story. The world was watching. Sympathy for the Sussexes was growing. Many believed this interview would finally clear the air. Instead, it triggered years of debate. One of the first bombshell claims involved a private wedding ceremony allegedly taking place before the official royal wedding. It sounded dramatic. It sounded shocking. It sounded like the ultimate hidden secret.
In those months when I was pregnant, so we have in tandem the conversation of he won't be given security, he's not going to be given a title, and also concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born.
Then the claim began unraveling. Questions emerged. Clarifications followed. Suddenly, the explosive revelation that had captured headlines around the world was being challenged. Critics wondered how such a major detail could become so controversial so quickly. But that was only the beginning. The most explosive moment of the interview centered around concerns allegedly expressed regarding Archie before his birth. The entire world froze when Meghan described conversations involving how dark her baby's skin might be.
In the Oprah interview, you accuse members of your family of racism. You don't even...
No, we didn't.
Well,
the British press said that.
Right.
Did Meghan ever mention they were racist?
She said there were troubling comments about
Archie's
skin
there was
color.
concern about his skin colour.
Right. Wouldn't you describe that as essentially racist?
I wouldn't.
The reaction was immediate. Headlines exploded globally. Public opinion shifted overnight. Royal commentators, journalists, and audiences all rushed to interpret what had been said. The allegations created one of the biggest royal controversies in modern history. Then, something unexpected happened. Years later, Harry appeared to soften the interpretation of those comments. Suddenly, the narrative became more complicated than the public originally believed. Critics seized on the contradiction. Supporters struggled to explain the changing story. Questions multiplied instead of disappearing.
These absolute cretins decide to inject themselves into the devastation in Los Angeles for one reason: to get their faces back on camera and to improve their image. They want people to think well of them, so they decide, what they really need? Us. What they need is us.
And that is where a recurring pattern began emerging. Every attempt to settle one controversy seemed to create another. Every explanation generated fresh questions. Fast forward to January 2025. Los Angeles was battling devastating wildfires. Families were suffering. Communities were displaced. Amid the disaster, Meghan and Harry appeared at a relief center to help victims. On paper, it looked like exactly the kind of humanitarian work they often champion. Yet once again, critics were waiting. Photos circulated, television cameras captured their arrival. Social media immediately exploded with accusations that the visit was more about publicity than relief efforts. Some public figures openly questioned the timing and motivation. Instead of praise, another controversy was born. At nearly the same moment, Meghan's highly anticipated Netflix lifestyle project faced an awkward challenge. The devastation across California made promotional efforts appear potentially tone-deaf. Which should have been a major career moment suddenly found itself overshadowed by a completely different conversation. Then came Spotify. The deal was supposed to be huge. Reports valued it at around $20 million. Expectations were massive. Industry observers predicted groundbreaking content. Instead, only limited podcast content appeared before the partnership collapsed in spectacular fashion. What followed was brutal. A senior Spotify executive publicly mocked the Sussexes in comments that quickly went viral. Suddenly, the failed partnership became one of the most discussed entertainment stories of the year. Questions surfaced about productivity. Questions surfaced about commitment. Questions surfaced about what had actually happened behind closed doors. Even worse, reports emerged claiming Meghan was not personally conducting many of the interviews associated with her podcast content. Whether fair or unfair, the allegations fueled another wave of criticism. The story became less about podcasting and more about credibility. For many critics, however, the Spotify collapse was only the beginning of Meghan Markle's public image problems. Because while one controversy was fading, another was already racing toward her. And this one involves something that should have been simple, a handwritten anniversary card. In May 2026, Meghan shared what appeared to be a touching surprise from airline staff while returning from Geneva. The card wished her and Harry a happy wedding anniversary. At first glance, it looked sweet, harmless, romantic, exactly the kind of spontaneous moment that social media loves. But within hours, online investigators were pulling the story apart piece by piece. Suddenly, people were questioning whether the surprise was actually a surprise at all. Critics allege the gesture may have been arranged in advance. Others claim the card looked far too convenient. Before long, what should have been a feel-good moment became another internet mystery. What made the situation worse was that people began focusing on details, tiny details, the kind that usually do not matter until they suddenly matter a lot. Why was Harry reportedly not even there? Why did the story appear so perfectly packaged for public consumption? Why did it feel less like an unexpected gesture and more like a carefully prepared publicity moment? Those questions spread faster than the original story itself. Once again, a positive headline transformed into another debate. Then came the gifting controversy. Meghan's lifestyle brand was attempting to generate excitement through influencer packages. It sounded like standard marketing. Companies do it every day. But critics claimed her team had made a serious mistake when one of the recipients turned out to be a social media personality known for harsh attacks against members of the royal family. Suddenly, people were asking why someone accused of spreading negativity was receiving personal attention and gifts. The irony became impossible for critics to ignore. Meghan had spent years speaking about online toxicity and cyberbullying, yet now she was being accused of indirectly rewarding one of the internet's most aggressive royal commentators. And as if that was not enough, another unexpected problem exploded. A celebrity supporter who had publicly defended Meghan for years reportedly complained about being excluded from the gifting campaign entirely. In a single promotional rollout, critics claimed Meghan had somehow upset supporters while creating new controversies with opponents. It was the kind of public relations nightmare that marketing teams dread. Then there was the business rebrand. Meghan's lifestyle venture launched with a glamorous name and ambitious plans. The branding appeared polished. The vision appeared clear. Everything seemed ready for a major success story. Then legal complications reportedly emerged. Trademark issues, naming disputes, objections. Suddenly, the original identity of the brand began falling apart. Eventually, the name had to be abandoned and replaced. Critics immediately questioned why such a basic obstacle had not been anticipated from the start. Instead of looking strategic, the rebrand looked reactive. Meanwhile, media coverage was becoming increasingly hostile. Publications that once celebrated Meghan were now publishing deeply critical stories. Former admirers appeared to be turning into skeptics. Former employees spoke publicly. Neighbors reportedly shared complaints. Commentators dissected contested every allegation. Fair or unfair, the perception battle was becoming harder to win. Then came another devastating collision of timing. Just as Meghan prepared for a major Netflix launch designed to showcase a softer, more domestic side of her personality, old allegations about workplace behavior returned to dominate headlines. Instead of discussing recipes, lifestyle tips, and homemaking content, audiences were suddenly debating stories involving former staff members. The contrast could not have been worse. One narrative was trying to present warmth and authenticity. The other was raising uncomfortable questions about past conduct. And then Australia happened. The visit to a children's hospital was intended to highlight compassion and community outreach, but critics quickly turned the spotlight elsewhere. Reports and accusations began circulating. Questions were raised about publicity, privacy, and optics. Some observers argued that the visit created uncomfortable contradictions regarding the Sussexes' long-standing concerns about protecting their own children's privacy while appearing publicly with other children. By that point, critics believed they had identified a pattern. Not one disaster, not two, not three, but a chain of moments where carefully planned image-building efforts appeared to backfire in spectacular fashion. Whether deserved or exaggerated, the perception kept growing stronger. Every controversy seemed connected to the last. Every attempted comeback appeared to generate another obstacle. And that may be the biggest mystery of all. Was Meghan Markle simply the victim of relentless scrutiny unlike any public figure could survive? Or were these public relations disasters warning signs of a strategy that kept collapsing under its own weight? The debate continues, the arguments grow louder, and one thing remains certain: this story is far from over.